Okay. All right, so we are going to go ahead today and get started in a supine shavasana, or fully reclined down on your back. And for today, our focus pose is lunge. So we'll be going through a variety of lunges, talking about alignment for them. And because of that, that means our focused area of the body is legs and hips, and kind of that idea of how the legs and hips work together and attach to the torso and the core. So when you come into your supine shavasana, one option that might be helpful is, instead of, you can take the option of completely extending the legs, or you can keep the feet on the floor, knees up, knees are bent, and then move the feet wider, maybe out even as far as the edges of the mat, and then allow the knees to fall together. And then adjust your ankles and your feet accordingly so that it's comfortable and you can settle into that and let the body relax. And then adjust the shoulders, adjust your upper arms, let the sternum lift to the ceiling, and relax the back of the head and the back body. And then we'll breathe into it. And as you breathe, notice the rise and fall of the belly in space. And the reason I give this option with your knees bent is one of the main muscles that attach our legs to our torso is the psoas muscle. And the psoas muscle attaches at our lumbar spine. It threads through the pelvis and then attaches to the thigh. So it kind of, it becomes engaged then anytime we move the hip, and this particular shape helps that psoas to get a little bit of a break and release. Whichever version you've chosen, if you notice any areas in the body that have extra sensation or extra tension, or if you're not noticing that, but you want to start to connect more fully with the legs and the hips, whichever of those apply to you, start to direct your breath to that area of the body. Maybe if it's a situation where you're feeling significant sensation or tension in a body part, you assign a color or a light to your breath. And as you pull that breath fully into the lungs, you imagine the light or the color spilling past the lungs, traveling the body to that particular area or body part or joint. It swirls around, soothing and comforting. And then you follow that color or light out through the exhale, imagining it releasing the tension and the toxins. You are welcome to continue working with your eyes closed. Or as we move into the warm-ups, if it's more comfortable for you, go ahead and blink the eyes open gently. As we move into the warm-up, if your knees are bent, you're going to go ahead and slide the feet out, extending the legs long. And then move the heels of the feet out to the outer edges of your mat. And then you're going to keep the right foot where it is and slide the left foot closer to the right. Now that might mean it comes to mid-mat. It might mean it comes closer to the ankle, or it might mean that you are able to cross the left ankle over the right. If you're feeling plenty enough sensation in whichever version that you are in with that left ankle, you're staying there. Otherwise, if you need a little bit more sensation, you're going to shift the hips over to the left and then cross the left ankle over the right. And then your shoulders are either going to stay towards center, or you're going to start to move the shoulders and upper body over to the right. And then the arms can either stay down by your side, or you can lift them above your head, or grab opposite elbows. So you're making this banana shape with your body, feeling the opening along the left side body, especially between the armpit and the top of the hip, all those spaces in between the ribs. And then also specifically starting to open up that IT band on the left side. We'll just hold here for one more breath. On your next inhale, releasing that left foot, moving it again over closer to the left. If you've shifted your hips to the left, center them. If you've shifted your shoulders to the right, center them. And then we'll start again from that right foot. You're going to slide the right foot any amount closer to the left. It might stop halfway. It might come all the way over. You might shift your hips to the right. You might cross your right ankle over the left. Any of those variations, that's the best fit for you. And then shoulders can stay to center, or you move the shoulders over to the left, either grabbing those opposite elbows, this time with the other hand on top if possible, or you can extend the arms above your head or keep your hands down near your hips. And this time, wherever you're feeling that additional sensation, you're drawing your breath, directing it to that part of the body, and allowing it to calm and soothe. Last exhale here. On your inhale, release the right foot. Slide it over to the right side of the mat. Center your hips and shoulders if you need to. And then lengthen the arms above the head. Point the toes. Take that nice long full body stretch. Open it up from the waist down and the waist up. As you exhale, the hands come back down to your sides. And then pull those feet back up towards your hips. And this time, move the feet and the heels as close to your sits bones or your seat as comfortably you can. Noticing any sensation in your knees that are asking you to back off and following that, if it's hocks. And then toes and knees straight ahead, straight up from the hips. Take an inhale to prepare. As you exhale, gently press the low back towards the floor. You can stay right here in this motion, or on an inhale, start to press into your feet and your upper back and shoulders and float the hips up any amount. They might just hover, or maybe the hips lift an inch or two, and then we're going to just hold there and breathe, feeling the engagement of the gluteal muscles, the hamstrings, feeling the pressure of the bottom of the feet on the floor, feeling the engagement even of pulling that bottom rib towards the top of the pelvis. So you're already activating that core. And then exhale, you're going to lower down slowly, melting one vertebrae down to the floor at a time. Gently, slowly release. And then on the inhale, allow that low back to come into its natural curve. Exhale to press the low back down, and inhale, press into the feet and upper back and float the hips up. Maybe you feel, if it's appropriate, to lift them just a little higher this time, We'll just pause here for one breath. And then exhale, slowly, gently, lowering down one vertebrae at a time again. When the tailbone lands down last, inhale and release any engagement. As you do, you can start to float one knee at a time up towards the chest. Maybe grabbing behind the thighs, maybe you grab the fronts of the shins. And you can either rock side to side, or maybe you start to circle the knees, drawing circles on the ceiling with the knees as you feel the massage around the pelvis and hip bones. And then reversing that circle if that's what you're doing. Slowing it down and eventually pulling the knees back into the chest and starting to shift the legs and hips from front to back. Maybe eventually grabbing enough momentum that you're rolling along the base of the spine and then rolling from the shoulder blades to the tailbone, eventually rolling all the way up. If that's not a fit for you, you're going to roll over to your side, help yourself up and come up into an easy seated pose, which means you can have the legs crossed. You can have the legs in butterfly pose with feet together, knees out, or maybe the legs straight out in front of you. Maybe you even try either half lotus or full lotus. Whichever variation you've chosen, you're going to take an inhale, lift the arms, and then as you exhale, go ahead and take that left hand to the right knee, right hand comes over to the right hip, and just gaze over the right shoulder. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, twist over towards the left, gazing over the left shoulder. Inhale, lift up, and then exhale, bring those hands down in front of you and start to lower your chest towards your legs any amount. So that might mean that you're just landing your fingertips down on the floor, that's fine. Or it might mean for some that you're coming all the way down, resting your chest on your legs. Either variation is fine. And then inhale, push the floor away, come up to seated. Swing those arms around behind you and press the fingertips towards the seat, moving the elbows closer together behind you. Take note of which leg or foot is on top or in front if your legs are crossed, and you're going to release that and bring the feet down in front of you, still keeping weight back in the hands. You can stay right here. Next variation is to float the toes. Next variation is to float the heels. Next variation is to float the hands, or bring the hands behind the thighs for leverage. Whichever variation you're in, you're pulling the sternum towards the knees and breathing for one more cycle of breath. And then exhale, and you're going to recross, if you're coming into a cross, with the other leg in front or on top, or come back to your extended seated pike pose or your butterfly pose. Repeating all that on the other side. So you're going to inhale, lift up. Exhale, this time you're taking your side twist to the left. Maybe this time that left hand comes back behind you just a little bit more. Maybe you gaze over that left shoulder just a little bit more and noticing what's happening in your neck as you do so. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, take that twist over to the right, and maybe it's coming just a little bit deeper. Inhale, lift up, and then exhale, fold forward any amount. Hold there for a breath. And then inhale, lift the arms, swing them around back behind you. Pull those fingertips towards your seat. Lift the sternum, pull the elbows together. Uncross your legs or bring your legs to the front of you. Maybe it's just toes floating. Maybe it's heels floating. Maybe it's hands floating or hands behind the thighs. Hold there for one more cycle of breath. And then exhale, lower the feet back down to the floor. You can cross your ankles and roll over the fronts of your knees, or you can swing your legs around to the side. Pull the knees underneath you and come into that wide starfish hand shape that we make, and plug the base knuckle and the fingertip of each finger down into the mat. Think about pulling the shoulder blades broadly open across that upper back, so you're making those wings opening up to the side, and the elbow creases facing each other. Inhale to tuck the toes into the mat, and then as you exhale, press the hips up towards the ceiling and starting to bring some length to the spine. You might have a significant bend in your knees and your heels might be off the mat by a few inches. That part's fine. What you're trying to focus on more is lifting the tailbone up to extend that spine. And then as you feel that there's space in your hamstrings and low back, maybe then you start to extend those legs and lower the heels down. If that does not happen for you, that's totally fine. Take another inhale here. And then exhale, bring your gaze towards your hands, step, walk, or hop your feet forward so that the toes land behind the palms in forward fold. Exhaling to release tension out of the back of the neck. Inhale to press the hands into the shins and extend the spine. And then exhale, forward fold. Inhale, press into your feet, lift the torso, extend the arms, reach them up to the ceiling. And then exhale to bring the hands together through heart center and lower the shoulders away from the ears. Feel the foundation of the feet on the floor. Actually, maybe even notice the big toe ball mound and baby toe ball mound and the base of the heel. Inhale to reach the arms up. Exhale, cactus the arms or field pose the arms and lift the sternum towards the ceiling in a baby back bend. Inhale to reach the hands up. Bring them together and exhale the hands through heart center as you hinge from the hips and lower into forward fold. Inhale and extend the spine. Exhale, lower the hands down to the mat and then step or hop your feet all the way to the back of your mat. And if you choose, lower the knees down into modified plank or keep the knees off the mat in full plank. Inhale here. Exhale, squeeze those elbows in as you lower the torso down into chaturanga. And then inhale either into a baby cobra or extend the arms up into high cobra or float the legs into upward facing dog. And then exhale, press into the feet, float the hips up and come into downward facing dog. On your next inhale, we're going to release the right foot. The toes can just hover, or you pull the heel up to hip height, or you start to float the toes up towards the ceiling, but keep equal weight in both hands and try to keep the collarbones parallel to the mat. As you lift the right toes, you're opening that right hip over to the right side. And then on your exhale, bring the gaze forward, lower the foot down, lower both knees down, and come into tabletop. Moving that right hand so you can swing the right leg around and put that right foot down right where the right hand was. And while you're still lowered down, just kind of lean to the left side and check to make sure that that right knee is directly over the right ankle. If it's not, just adjust the ankle and help it so that you keep the knee over the ankle or slightly behind. Avoid having that knee pull way out in front of the toes. From there, we're going to inhale, press the floor away and come up to a kneeling on your left knee. If this is too much sensation on that left knee, you can fold your mat over, or you can use a small cushion or a thin cushion underneath that knee, like maybe a folded blanket or a small pillow. Bring your hands to your hips. Think about encouraging that right hip to stay towards the midline. So it might want to feel like it can sass out to the right, We're wanting that pelvis to stay parallel to the top edge of the mat and the hip bones to stay parallel also to the floor. So we are in a low lunge here, directly on top of our knee. You can stay right there if that's better for you. Or lowering the hands down, start to move that left knee back in space. Inhale to press yourself back up. And notice now what's happened with that right hip, encouraging it to midline again, and keeping the hips parallel as you shift the pelvis forward. Right knee stays above the ankle. Inhale, lift the arms up to the ceiling, gaze on the fingers, or keep your hands on your hips. You are welcome to stay right here, or if you would like just a little bit added challenge, you can inhale, press into the bottom of the right foot, into the top of the left foot, and float that left knee up in low crescent lunge. And then exhale, release it down. Bring both hands down. Tuck the back toes into the mat. Float the back knee up. Inhale and lift up again. Now, covering a few more points around lunges, just like we're trying to pay attention to what is happening with the insertion of the legs into the torso, we also want to pay attention to what's happening with the feet. So in high crescent lunge, the right foot is pulling back towards the left foot's pulling up towards the right foot. So you're creating a scissoring motion in your inner thighs to pull those two in opposition. Inhale from here, lift the arms up and maybe gaze at the fingers. High crescent lunge. Now keeping your hands where they are, on an inhale, you're going to press up in your feet so you can pivot that back foot down so that it's pointing out at about 10 o'clock on a clock face. Come back into your lunge on the front knee, and you're coming into warrior one. Pulling back on the right hip, encouraging the left hip to move forward, and breathe here. Fronts of the ankles are engaged. Exhale to release those hands back behind you. You're going to interlace the fingers together. Take an inhale and lift the sternum as the hands move down towards the back leg. Breathe here. And then inhale, extend that front leg. Now, if you feel like maybe that's a little bit of a wide base for you, you're going to step that back foot in a step. Take an inhale to prepare, and then as you exhale, hinge forward. Maybe you pause when your torso gets to be about hip height, coming into this version of pyramid pose. Now, if you feel like you have additional space in your hamstring and low back, maybe on an exhale, you start to waterfall the torso over that front leg. Maybe the hands even start to float up off the tailbone in pyramid pose. And then exhale, release the hands, bring them to your hips. Inhale to float the torso up. Come to the ball mound of the back foot. On an inhale, press off that foot and float it up. Maybe you kickstand the toes down next to the right. Maybe the knee floats up to hip height. From there, you can interlace your fingers around the fronts of the shins. Maybe you hold behind the thigh, or maybe you take a big toe grip with your first two fingers. You can stay right there, or on an exhale, start to extend that left leg long out in front of you, any amount. Knee can stay bent any amount, or leg can go straight any amount. Right arm can reach to the ceiling if you like. Now our next transition is you can draw that knee back into the chest and release your grip and lower the foot. Or if you would like to try the challenge, engage the core, and on an exhale, bring that right hand to the hip as you start to shift your torso forward, lowering that left foot to land right next to the right foot. And you exhale into forward fold. Inhale, half lift, toe heel the feet together to touch. Bring the calves together, bring the knees together, bring the inner thighs together. And then lower your forearms just above the knees. Now we're moving into fierce pose. If you know that it's better for you to move into this pose with a wider stance with your feet, please go ahead and take that now. Otherwise, we're going to inhale, lift the torso, extend the arms straight out from the shoulders, engage the bottom rib to the top of the pelvis as you encourage the tailbone down towards the floor. Take an inhale here. And then as you exhale, you're going to pull that right arm back. Let the gaze follow your right thumb coming into twisted Utkatasana. Bring the weight into the right foot. Start to float the left foot. And then step that left foot back behind you. And now you are in a twisted lunge. Lowering that right hip as much as is appropriate so you can keep that knee over the ankle, right hip encouraged towards midline, and both feet pulling towards each other for one more breath. Now exhale, lower that left hand inside the right foot. Allow that right hand to reach up, and we are in dragonfly lunge. Think about encouraging the left hip to pull up in space as the right hip is encouraged to move towards the midline. And then exhale, the left knee down towards the mat. Take an inhale to prepare. And then as you exhale, start to shift the hips back in space. Now you're starting to feel, probably for most of us, a more intense stretch in that right IT band. The right toes can stay down, or you can flex the right foot. Flexing the foot for me intensifies the sensation. You can play around with it. Exhale to shift back towards the front, lowering your hand next to your right foot. Now for the next variation, it can be quite of an intense sensation on the left knee. So it's not going to necessarily be for everyone. If you want to pad that back knee, you can give it a try. What we're going to do is inhale, float the left toes up towards the ceiling. You might want to stay here, or bring that torso up by bringing the hands to the front thigh, or taking that left hand, reaching back around behind you, grabbing the inner arch or front of the ankle of the foot, and then taking a bind, opening up from that left hip flexor and quadricep all the way down. Last breath here. And then exhale, gently release that grip. Lower the hands and the foot back down to the floor. Shift your right foot more towards the center, maybe 6 to 8 inches back. Inhale to float that back knee and the hips up. And then move the right hand about 6 to 8 inches in front of the right foot. Start to lighten the load on the back foot and bring your weight into the front foot. Now you can stay right here in this variation of a standing splits, or you can start to float that left foot up. Maybe you float the left hand to the hip, or maybe you bring the left hand up towards the ceiling, coming into half moon balancing pose. Really flexing the left foot, energy pulling out that left heel. You can stay right here. If you'd like to take one more bind, you're going to bring that knee in, grab the front of the ankle, press the ankle into the hand into the ankle, and you have bound half moon. Next transition, you are welcome to drop the left foot next to the right and come up to a stand, or keeping that grip, inhale, start to float the torso up with the left foot and the left hand. Once you're there, right now, I have an outer arch grip with that hand. I'm going to move my hand around and get an inner arch grip. Right hand is on my hip. I'm going to press the left foot into left hand into left foot. And then start to teeter-totter forward, maybe extending that right arm up, coming into King Dancer pose. Last breath here. And then exhale, gently release. Come to a stand at the top of your mat. Bringing your hands together at heart center. Feeling the foundation under your feet and feeling your breath. Noticing the sensation between the two legs. Does one side feel different than the other? On your next inhale, gently blink the eyes open, release the hands down. On the exhale, inhale to press into your feet, reach the arms up to the ceiling, and then make cactus arms with your arms and lift the sternum towards the ceiling. Inhale to reach the hands up. Exhale, hinge forward from the hips as you come through heart center. Maybe you just come where your torso is hip height. That's totally cool. Maybe you come a little bit deeper or fuller. That's fine too. Whatever feels good in your body. Inhale the hands to the shins, extend that spine. And then exhale, lower down into forward fold as you deep bend in the knees to drop your hands to the floor and then step your feet towards the back of your mat. Broaden out across that upper back. Open up those butterfly wings of your shoulder blades. Inhale to prepare. And then exhale, shift forward, lower the torso down into chaturanga. Inhale either into low cobra or extend the arms up in high cobra or float the thighs in upward facing dog. And then exhale to float the hips up. Extend the arms, extend the spine. Maybe you start to lengthen the legs for downward facing dog. Inhale, release the left foot. Maybe you just float the toes and stay right here. Maybe you bring that left heel up to left hip. Maybe you open that left hip to the left side as you point the toes up to the ceiling and then rebalance your weight between the two hands. And then exhale, release that leg, pull the knee forward and lower both knees down to tabletop. Take a breath here, remove that left hand so you have space to step the left foot there. And then same as before, take a look to the side, make sure that knee is either above or behind the front ankle. Push the floor away. Inhale, come to a stand on your right knee. Make sure you pat it if it's asking for that. And then take stock of what's happening with your hips and pelvis. We're encouraging that left hip to stay towards midline. We're encouraging both pelvis points to stay parallel to the top edge of the mat. And then from there, you're stacking those shoulders, lifting the crown of the head to the ceiling. Now right here, let's start with that engagement. So think about isometrically, so pulling back without actually moving the right heel or left heel towards the right knee. And then think about pressing in to the top of your right foot and the shin. So you're almost floating the knee, but not quite. So there's less pressure on the knee. And then you're pulling the right foot towards the left. So you're creating that scissoring sensation in the inner thighs right away. Exhale, release down. We're going to come into that low runner's lunge, which means you're just shifting that right knee back in space any amount. So maybe the right knee just moves an inch or two. Maybe you take it back significantly. Either way, you're going to, again, encourage that left hip to not sass out to the left side. Keep it towards midline and encourage that right hip to stay lifted. Take an inhale, push the floor away again, reach the arms up towards the ceiling if that's good in your shoulders and neck. If not, hands can stay on the front thigh. And then if you would like to add in that little bit of a challenge, you're going to inhale and press into the top of the back foot, float the back knee off, and hold here for a breath, shoulder blades melting down the back. Exhale to release all of that. tuck the back toes into the mat, float the back knee up, and on an inhale, lift the torso up. Now in high crescent lunge, your hip and pelvis alignment is going to stay the same as low crescent lunge, so pay attention to that. And then create that scissor motion with the inner thighs. And inhale. If it feels good in your neck and shoulders, reach the arms up. Maybe gaze comes to your fingertips. If that's not good for your neck, gaze can go to where the wall meets the ceiling, or gaze can go to where the wall meets the floor. On your next inhale, press into your back foot and then pivot it down so that its toes are pointing out to 2 o'clock on the clock face. Encourage the right hip forward, left hip back, and then you're lunging into the front knee in the mount. Exhale to release those hands down towards your back. This time you're going to interlace the fingers in a way that feels awkward. Pull the hands down the back leg as you inhale and lift the sternum. Nice. On your next inhale, extend the front leg. Maybe you step that back foot in a couple inches if decreasing the depth is better for you. And then one more time, let's inhale, lift the sternum, and then exhale, hinge forward until you come to about hip height. And maybe you leave your hands resting on your tailbone, and maybe you stay right here with the shoulders pulling out of the ears, core engaged. Or maybe on an exhale, you start to float that torso down towards the front leg, floating the hands up off the tailbone. And then exhale the hands to the hips. Inhale the torso up. Come to the ball of the back foot. On an inhale, push the floor away. Start to float that knee up towards front, or just kickstand the toes down on the floor. You can take a breath here, either bringing the hands behind the thigh, hands across the front of the shin, or bringing it to a toe grip on the big toe. You're welcome to stay here, or on an exhale, start to press that right heel forward. As you do, think about pulling that right hip back. Maybe the left arm reaches for the ceiling. Hold and breathe. Find a gaze point on the floor that's not moving to help with your balance. Now exhale that left hand back to the hip. You are welcome to release the grip with your knee, thigh, or toe and lower the right foot to the left. Or as you exhale, hinge forward from the hips as your right heel slowly pulls you down towards the floor. And then exhale and release into forward fold. Inhale, hands to shins and extend the spine. Toe heel the feet together. And again, you are welcome to take the wider stance for Utkatasana. Engage the fronts of the ankles. Pull those knees back behind so you can see your toes. Toes might even be able to float off the floor. And if you want to stay right here with the forearms on the thighs, you're welcome to do so. Or inhale, lift the sternum, lift the torso, lift the hands straight out from the shoulders, engage the core, pull the tailbone down. Inhale to prepare. As you exhale, you're going to pull that left hand back behind you. Gaze comes to your left thumb. Right thumb reaches out in front of you. Bring the weight into the left foot. Release the right foot. And then take a step back, coming into twisted lunge. Encourage that left hip towards midline and encourage the feet to isometrically pull together, engaging the inner thighs. Exhale, windmill the hands so that you can lower the right hand down inside the left foot and reach the left hand up to the ceiling in dragonfly twist. If this is not a fit for you, you are welcome to just lower that left hand down to the top knee or down to the floor. Whichever variation you're in, encourage that right hip to lift up as the left hip comes towards center. Exhale the back knee down to the floor. Take an inhale to prepare, and then exhale. Shift the hips back in space. Maybe you pull the left toes up, opening up that IT band. And then exhale. Release all that, come back towards the front. This again is where we're going to put a little bit more pressure on the back knee. And remember too, we have this angle, so we're not directly standing on that knee when we try to lift off the toes. You have the weight forward. And then if it's a fit for you, either with a knee cushion or not, you're going to float the back toes, point them up towards the ceiling. You can stay right here, or you can lift the left hand to the left thigh, reach that right arm back behind you, and take the bind as you encourage the shoulders to stay parallel towards the top edge of the mat. It doesn't mean that they're going to be 100% there. That's just what we're working towards. And then exhale, release it down. Shift your left foot more towards the center of your mat. Bring that left hand about 6 to 8 inches in front of the left foot, and then start to lift that back knee off the floor, bringing your weight into your right foot. Now, this is an unusual but very valid variation of standing splits. If this is better for your balance or better for your body, stay right here. If you would like, maybe you start to lift that right foot up, and you can always keep the right hand down. If you're going to do that, though, try to keep the right toes pointing down towards the floor. Or you bring the right toes, point out to the right side, opening the right hip out, and then floating the right hand up into half moon balance. Gaze is on something not moving. Core is engaged. Try to stack the left hand over the left shoulder over the right shoulder over the right hand. And then release. Maybe you want to take that bind. If so, pull that right knee in, then grab the ankle and start to pull the hand into the ankle, ankle into the hand. For your transition, you can drop that right foot down next to the left, or maybe you float up with the bind and then pivot the grip so that now the right hand is on the right inner arch. Left hand can stay on the left hip, or you can reach the left hand up. And then as you kick the hand into the foot into the hand, pull the hand into the foot. Maybe you start to hinge forward just a few inches for King Dancer. Exhale to gently release. Lower the right foot down next to the left. Stand in equal standing pose, mountain pose. Maybe you have the hands open to the front. Maybe you bring the hands to heart center. Feel the breath. Exhale to release the hands, blink the eyes open. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, hinge forward, coming into forward fold. Inhale and half lift. And then exhale, bring the hands to the mat. Step the feet back behind you, coming into tabletop. You are welcome to stay right here, or you can shift that right knee up towards the right wrist, slide the left foot back as then you start to angle the left or the right heel towards the left groin, or maybe that right foot comes over towards the left side of the mat. As you extend that left leg long back behind you, I encourage you to take a peek over your left shoulder, and then either with the toes tucked or toenail side of the foot down, you want to make sure that that heel and ankle are straight up to the ceiling. So we are setting up now for pigeon pose. If coming into it this way is not a fit for you, from tabletop, You're going to swivel around and come to a seat on your bum. And then you're going to bend the left knee, cross the right ankle over, and come into a seated figure four. You can also do figure four all the way down on your back if you'd rather come into a reclined position. Now, if you are in pigeon pose, you are going to encourage that, think about encouraging that left hip down and towards the front, and encourage the right hip back. Typically, we kind of shift into it, and the leg that's in front, the pelvis kind of angles towards that direction. We want to try to keep the pelvis parallel to the top edge of the mat. If coming into a reclined pigeon, lowering down onto your elbows or dropping the head would feel comfortable in your body, go ahead and take that variation if you prefer. Whichever variation you're in, just hold for a breath. Deep, full, lengthened inhales, lengthened exhales. Directing the breath in your mind to any areas of the body that are feeling any amounts of sensation. On your next natural inhale, start to lift the torso. We're going to shift over towards our right hip so we can tuck the left toes in and just create enough space to slide that right foot back and come back into tabletop. You are welcome to stay right here in tabletop. You can tuck the toes into the mat, walk the hands back. Maybe you stay right here with that foot opener. Maybe you float the knees up, either keeping the hands on the floor or hands to the legs in balancing ball pose. If you would like to try an arm balance, and it's a fit in your body today, you're going to walk the hands. Actually, I'm going to move so you can see me to the front. You're going to walk your hands over to the left, set up for plank or chaturanga hands and forearms, and then just lift the hips enough so you can catch the outside of the left hip on the top of the elbow and upper arm, and then encourage that right knee to stay in alignment with left knee. Gaze comes about 6 to 8 inches out in front of your fingertips, and then you just start to gently wiggle those toes out, engage the core, and maybe you float up inside crow. Maybe you just bounce the toes on and off the mat. Playing around with it. And then exhale, push back, pivot around if you need to, and come back into tabletop. We will all meet here. You all know where we're going for pigeon. So if you're coming into reclined pigeon, you're going to pull the left knee up to the left wrist, and then angle the left toe either to the right knee or groin, or maybe out to the right side of the mat. As you shift that right leg down along the mat behind you. If you are in tabletop and you don't want to do reclined pigeon, you are going to swivel around, come to a seat on your bum, and cross the left ankle over the right knee in seated figure four, or down on your back in reclined figure four. If you're in reclined pigeon, check out that right heel. Make sure that it's pointing up to the ceiling. Then, with the sternum pulling through the upper arm bones, the right hip is encouraged to move forward, and the left hip is encouraged to pull back. If you choose, maybe you exhale and lower down into a more reclined position. Focus on your breath. On your next natural inhale, tucking those back toes in, lifting the torso up, and then shifting forward so that you can come up to that back knee and pull the left knee back in space. You can stay right here in tabletop. You can tuck your toes into the mat and walk your hands back towards your knees. Or maybe you push the floor away and float the knees and come into balancing ball, either with the arms on the legs or on the floor. If you'd like to try side crow on this side, you're going to walk those hands around to the right side of the mat this time. Set up again those chaturanga hands and forearms. Inhale to float up the hips and lift that right hip on top of the right upper arm and elbow. And then encouraging the left knee to stay in alignment with the right knee. Start to bring your gaze 6 to 8 inches out in front of those fingertips. Engage the core. And then float the toes maybe, or not. Maybe you bounce them. And then eventually, when you're done, setting the toes back down, pressing that back, and then come back to tabletop. Widen the knees out towards the edges of the mat. Touch the toes together behind you and start to lower your seat down towards your heels. Extend the arms out and then lower the torso down, maybe resting your forehead down on the mat in child's pose. Inhale to lift the gaze. Shift yourself up. Slide over to one hip and then swing your legs around. Coming into some Navasana or boat pose variations. You're going to lift the toes, heels are into the mat. Hands can be on the fronts of the shins or hands can be behind the thighs. Sternum lifting towards the knees. Crown of the head lifting towards the ceiling. You can stay right here and you will feel an engagement of that area right around where you would put a belt on or a pair of jeans that are just a little bit snug. Feel that pull right as if you're pulling the belly button towards the spine. Or maybe you shift the torso back, but you still are reaching the sternum towards the knees. Maybe you float the heels. Maybe the feet come up to knee height. Maybe you release the hands. Whichever variation you have chosen, hold for another cycle of breath. And then exhale, lower the toes, and take a breath here. Repeating that, and possibly, if it feels good in your body, taking one more additional add-on. Starting all the same, pulling the shoulder blades down the back. Maybe you float the heels as you lift the sternum towards the knees. Maybe you bring the feet to knee height. Maybe you start to extend those toes up and you can keep your hands behind your thighs, or maybe you reach the fingertips towards the toes as you lift the sternum towards the knees. One more breath here. And then exhale, release it down. Finding centered spot on your mat. Go ahead and help yourself down. It could mean that you lower the knees over to the side and roll onto your side to get back. It could be that you use your hands behind your thighs as leverage, or maybe you extend the arms out and slowly, with control, lower down one vertebrae at a time, lowering the shoulders and then the head down last. Feet are on the floor, knees are up towards the ceiling, shoulder blades pulled down towards your back waist. And then again, bring those heels as close as is appropriate and comfortable in your body. So maybe you notice that you can draw the heels a little bit closer than when we did this at the beginning. If not, no worries. You listen to your body and use whatever angle on the knee is best for you. Palms are down and into the floor. You're going to take an inhale. As you exhale, press the low back into the mat. And then inhale again. Float the hips up. Maybe this time you're able to come up higher. Maybe you can even bring the hips so that you are in a straight line from your knees, pointing straight ahead, past your hips to your shoulders. And again, if you just have your hips up and hovering, that's totally fine too. We're going to hold here, engaging that whole back side of the legs, the glutes, the low back, for another cycle of breath. And then exhale from the shoulder blades, past the mid-back, down towards the low back, and then tailbone and pelvis land last. Take an inhale. Start to toe heel your feet out towards the edges of the mat. And then exhale, gently allow those knees to drop in together again, just like we did at the beginning. Breathe into the hips, the glutes, the hamstrings. You are welcome to stay here. If you prefer, you can inhale those knees back up to the ceiling. And we'll take a supine twist from this position. So moving the arms out from the shoulders. On an exhale, you're going to allow both knees to fall over to the right. Now this is a much wider stance than what we typically take. So now the left knee is essentially coming in inside the right foot. If this is not a good fit for your low back or your knees or hips or whatever, you are always welcome to take the more traditional supine twist that we usually do, or any variation that does feel good in your body today. If it's appropriate, maybe your chin comes over to the left shoulder. Inhale the chin up as the knees float up to center. And then exhaling, bringing the knees over to the left in whichever variation of supine twist chose for the first side. Or again, knowing that each side are not exactly even between the two sides, maybe you take a different variation on this side if your body calls for it. Just listen to what your body is asking. Gently, slowly, chin comes up, knees float up, and then sliding the feet out and down, legs extending, encouraging those feet to come as wide as it's comfortable for you, maybe heels even off the edges of the mat, letting those toes fall open, which helps to encourage the knees and the hips and the low back to just open and relax just a little bit more. Upper arm bones open to the ceiling, shoulders pulling down towards the back waist. And then if you'd like a little bit more grounding, you're going to pivot from the elbow, lower the palms down to the floor. Close your eyes if that's comfortable for you, and then engage all your attention on your breath. You notice there are any other thoughts trying to push in, you can acknowledge them And then on the exhale, allow them to float away as you bring your attention fully back to your breath again. Notice the sensations in the physical body. Use your breath to calm, ease, and quiet the body and staying in Shavasana for as long as you choose. If you are ready to move on, start to awaken the body gently. Small movements in the fingers and toes, hands and feet. Maybe you gently and slowly start to bring the legs together, reach the arms up, and point the toes as you take a nice long full body stretch if that would feel good. And then exhaling, rolling over to either side. And then resting your head on your upper arm just for a moment to acclimate. Right side tends to be a little bit more centering. Left side a little bit more energizing. On your next inhale, pressing the floor away, lifting the torso up, and then coming to a comfortable seat. Either bringing those hands to heart center or lowering the hands, palms to the legs. Take a nice long full inhale. As you do, find a moment of gratitude. Maybe for yourself for coming to this practice. Maybe for the yogis that developed the practice that is benefiting us today. On your next exhale, gently lower the chin towards the chest. Blink the eyes open. And namaste.